Okay, we've heard from the government and the opposition. Now let's get some perspective on what small business is saying. And to do that, we are joined by, in Montreal, Quebec, Daniel Tenser. He's the business editor at HuffPost Canada. And in the downtown core of our provincial capital, Ashley Challoner, Vice President, Policy, Ontario Chamber of Commerce. Good of both of you to join us tonight here on Budget Day in the province of Ontario. We will dive into the details of the budget, but first, why don't I just get a sort of an overarching comment from both of you on your sense of what this budget does for businesses. Ashley, you want to start us off?
So overall, we're quite pleased with this budget's approach to supporting business, certainly with respect to how it's focusing on small businesses, which, as we know, have been harder hit in the pandemic. And it's actually, there's a number of proposals in this budget that are things that we've been asking for some time. With respect to taxes, with respect to electricity. So overall, we're quite pleased.
Daniel, you've heard now from the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. I suspect you knew that already. As you fan out across the province and get reaction from others, what are you hearing?
Well, I'm getting sort of a similar reaction there, too, that business groups are quite happy with this. There are a lot of goodies in this budget, and some were targeted towards businesses, some were targeted towards individuals. But if you look at how everything was designed, even the stuff targeted towards individuals is really sort of targeted towards business. When you look at things such as the seniors' home tax credit and the 20% subsidy for staycations, however that will be worked out, all those things tend to accrue financial benefits to business. So there's definitely a sense in this budget that they are paying attention to small businesses and Ontario businesses and funneling money that way, even when they're looking at other things than direct support to businesses.
Yeah, actually, that staycation thing was sort of the shiny bauble in the window for this budget. Got a lot of people sort of wondering what that was. No details here, just an idea to explore the idea of a subsidy for staycations. We know tourism operators have been hit hard during this pandemic. What do you either know or hope will emerge from that policy once we start to get some meat on that bone?
We don't know anything yet, and it's clear that they have this idea of an idea, and that they're going to consult with the tourism industry and other stakeholders to fill it out and to see if it'll actually work the way they want it to. But this is really something that a number of different organizations, including ours, have been talking about. It makes a lot of sense from a safety perspective, as well as from a consumer comfort perspective, to focus on Ontario tourism. We know that that sector has been incredibly hard hit, and it makes a lot of sense to encourage Ontarians to go out and explore their province and spend their money, especially in those areas that perhaps rely on tourism largely for their economic development and revenue.
I wonder, though, Daniel, whether or not it would be, and again, we don't know, but whether it would be enough to encourage people to start traveling around the province when a lot of people obviously are, afraid to go back to work or afraid even to leave the home because they just don't feel it's safe out there. Would you imagine that this program, however it rolls out, how effective can it be?
Well, I think the design of the program is going to be key. A lot of the time, people don't even know about the available tax credits that they have and that sort of thing. So if it's just sort of rolled out as part of a budget and not much is said about it, I can imagine it having not that much impact. If they design it in a way that kind of stands out, if it's visible to the public, if people know that it's out there, then I think it has a chance of being kind of stimulative for these industries in Ontario that are obviously suffering right now through the pandemic. I think really marketing this program would be key. And how it's actually designed. Is it a tax credit? Is it a direct cash transfer somehow? What they actually do, what people are promised, I think will make a big difference here.
Mm-hmm. Ashley, the other sort of neat new idea was the notion of spending $57 million to help small businesses increase their online presence, presumably by helping them develop websites or something like that. How important might that be to small businesses in Ontario?
It's very important, and there's been a number of organizations and government initiatives, both at the provincial and the federal level, designed to help small businesses pivot to e-commerce or to establish a digital presence. But what is critically important to making that work, of course, is investing in broadband internet infrastructure so that these businesses can even access digital markets. And thankfully, we did see some of that in the budget as well. So it looks like the province recognizes that not only is digital absolutely essential to business right now and for the future, but the infrastructure problem is what's really keeping them held back.
It's funny you mentioned that, and well, funny is not the right word, but Daniel, we did a program earlier this week where we had somebody on the line from Sudbury. And of course, the broadband up there was so bad, the screen was freezing up all the time, and we had a lot of trouble understanding what she was saying. You can imagine how important this will be to people in rural and northern Ontario to see broadband improved. Now, they've got more than $500 million in this budget to improve it. How far along the way does that get you?
I'm not sure that it'll actually do the trick. I mean, it's certainly a lot more than what governments had committed before, but in this pandemic, we've seen governments step up to the plate. It's really become obvious that in this day and age, we can't afford to be behind on these technologies. A company in Scandinavia just this week released a survey of wireless prices. And once again, Canada came out #1 in the world on a per user basis. We are paying some of the highest wireless fees. It is true that we are a very large country geographically with a population that's spread out between many different centers, and it's expensive to fund that. But at the same time, I think that we haven't really put much of an emphasis on this, and we've let the big telcos basically, wire up the places where it's profitable and not wire up the places where it's not profitable. And now, in the midst of this pandemic, where businesses have to shift online, we're seeing, a negative effect from that. We're seeing the businesses in rural areas really are being held back. I think it's a good thing that the Ontario government has focused on it. And I think those efforts need to continue until we've got full coverage across this country.
Ashley, let me ask you about the insurance industry. My hunch is if we were having this conversation pre-pandemic and you read something in the budget about the government of Ontario wanting to come at the insurance industry, as it kind of has for the last 6 months, demanding rebates to customers and that kind of thing, you would not be pleased. So, okay, we're post-pandemic now, we're in the midst of the pandemic. What's your reaction to that nugget in the budget?
Well, the problem is that the insurance industry is facing some pretty big sea changes and new risks and extreme risks globally. This isn't just a problem in Ontario. And so the impact on Ontario businesses, it's not just because of an Ontario thing. This really is a global thing. So it's understandable that a lot of businesses, especially smaller ones, are having issues with their insurers, and those are legitimate concerns and ones that I know the insurance industry is aware of and working on. But it's not particularly helpful for the government to step in and attempt to demonize the insurance industry when there are bigger forces at play. And especially this week when the Insurance Bureau of Canada announced a program to assist the hospitality industry, particularly with managing risk and getting the insurance they need. So it's a business to business issue, and we are seeing some movement on that. And we would hope that the government would be a little bit more productive in helping that along.
Daniel, would you use the word demonize in the way that the Ford government referred to the insurance industry in the budget today?
Well, I think I can understand the frustration that a lot of people have been feeling with various parts of the insurance industry. I mean, I have been covering myself the problem with condo insurance over the past year or more in Canada, with a lot of companies pulling out of insuring condo buildings, the common areas, the buildings themselves. It's getting harder and harder to find coverage. Now, like Ashley said, there are a lot of reasons for that. Climate change is a major one. The cost of environmental damage, costs of construction are rising. So replacement costs on damaged buildings are rising. All of these things are convincing a lot of companies to get out of the business. But we do need to actually address this issue that we need insurance. There has to be a solution in there somewhere. The Ford government, in terms of helping businesses cover the costs, it's a good short-term solution, but I think we need to also look at longer-term solutions. I don't think that simply having the government step up and pay half of people's premiums as those premiums spike is a sustainable long-term solution to the problem.
There's another interesting little wrinkle in this budget, in as much as it is the law in Ontario that the Minister of Finance is supposed to, in his budget, lay out a path to balance. And it's interesting that the government sort of passed or will propose to pass a little out clause saying, well, we don't really have to do that this time because there is no path to balance in this budget. Ashley, is that a problem?
Sort of, but sort of not at the same time. You know, these are unprecedented times, to use an extremely overused phrase. And so, you know, I think we're all in a situation that none of us predicted. And so we're being forced into situations where we have to make decisions that we otherwise wouldn't have. So certainly, while generally the business community is concerned about Ontario's fiscal situation, we're still very much in the midst of this pandemic. There's still a lot of spending and support the government will have to get out the door. And we have another budget coming up not too far in the future, in the spring of 2021. And the government has made it clear that this is kind of part one of their plan, and they're doing a number of scenario assessments for how the pandemic will go and how the economy will respond. So I think it may be a bit premature for us to get on their case, so to speak, about debt and deficit, but it's certainly something to consider and be concerned about in the long term.
Well, yeah, Daniel, I mean, again, we go back to pre-pandemic and now midst of pandemic. Pre-pandemic, if any government of Ontario came in purporting to increase spending by 13%, you know, and put the deficit through the roof at $38.5 billion, you can imagine what the business community's reaction would be. I don't hear anybody saying the deficit's too big. I don't hear anybody saying they're spending too much. So do we have to reevaluate what it means to take on debt in this province now?
Well, I think during this period, yeah, especially from a political perspective, I mean, I don't think there is any political penalty right now for massive deficit spending. People want it. Businesses want it. Businesses have, you know, they suffered an extreme shock to revenue in the spring. Government aid has been robust. It's been very helpful. We can see that in the data. I think people right now want that to continue as long as this uncertainty goes on, as long as we don't know how long the pandemic continues. I think most people, if you look at the polling, most people agree that there will be a reckoning for all this debt spending eventually, but that day hasn't come. And if you look at the financial situation out there, well, the government of Ontario is paying about 1.35% on the money it's borrowing right now, which is super cheap. It's gone up a little bit since the summer, so you got to watch that. But you know, you're not going to get a better deal in terms of deficit spending than you are these days.
For sure. Ashley, down to my last minute here, and I just want to ask you about electricity rates, because there are, of course, some big subsidies in this budget for medium and larger size industrial and commercial businesses in order to help keep their electricity rates lower than they otherwise were. 14%, 16% rate cuts. How important is that to business?
It's very important. I mean, it has been important for years, but certainly now electricity is one of those costs that is profit insensitive, which is kind of the phrase of the day. So essentially, like many taxes, property taxes, for example, businesses are going to be paying the same amount regardless of if they brought in their expected revenue or not. So the government has taken a focus on profit insensitive costs, and electricity is a big one there. And so they're doing what they can to reduce the impact on industry. And actually a benefit to this, a side benefit to this, but one that we've been talking about for some time, is making Ontario more competitive with respect to its electricity rates. And it looks like this is something that is going to be a side effect of these rate reductions. The Ontario government is projecting that we'll be competitive with our neighboring jurisdictions in the states, which will help retain business and also potentially attract business to Ontario as well.
As they say, we shall see. Daniel, Ashley, it's good of both of you to join us and help us out with this tonight on Budget Day in the province of Ontario. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Steve.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.